The crimson emergency lights bathed the Galactic Academy's highest tower in an ominous glow. Professor Zelthara's 6 arms trembled as she sealed the ancient vault door, her crystalline eyes darting toward the spiral staircase where footsteps echoed in the darkness. "They're coming," she whispered to herself, her voice barely audible above the wailing sirens. After all these centuries, someone finally asked the right questions. 3 floors below, 4 alien students huddled in the shadowy alcove of the Academy's restricted wing. Crix, a young Zephyrian with scales that shifted from blue to silver when nervous, clutched a stolen access card in his webbed fingers. His bioluminescent patches flickered rapidly, a sure sign of fear mixed with excitement. "Are you absolutely certain about this?" asked Venna, her crystalline features catching the emergency lighting like fractured diamonds. Her species was known for their logical nature, but even she couldn't hide the curiosity burning in her multifaceted eyes. Thorn, a massive Gorvak whose rocky exterior made him look like a walking boulder, cracked his knuckles with sounds like grinding stone. "We've come this far. Besides, when was the last time the Academy locked down an entire wing, just because some students were asking questions about humans?" The 4th member of their group, Pip, was barely visible, except for her large, luminous eyes floating in what appeared to be empty space. The young shade's natural invisibility made her the perfect scout, but her voice betrayed her nervousness. "The professors have been acting strange ever since Crix brought up that old war footage in xenobiology class. Did you see how Professor Quen's tentacles went completely white?" Crix nodded, his scales now a deep purple, the color of determination among his people. "That's exactly why we need to know the truth. For 300 years, the Galactic Council has maintained the same story. Humans are banned from participating in interstellar conflicts because they're too primitive and lack proper tactical thinking. But something doesn't add up." He activated his portable holographic display, showing a star map dotted with red markers. "Look at this. Every major conflict in the past millennium, the Andromedan Uprising, the Vorthan Civil War, the Great Silence of Sector 7, they all ended the same way. Sudden, complete victory for whoever the Galactic Council supported with no clear explanation of how." Venna's crystalline form chimed softly as she processed the information. "The temporal coincidence is indeed suspicious. In each case, the conflicts ended within solar cycles of mysterious consultant deployments from Earth's solar system." A distant rumble shook the Academy walls. Through the massive viewing ports, they could see galactic enforcement vessels surrounding the station, their weapons powered but not yet charging. Whatever was happening, it was bigger than just 4 curious students breaking into a restricted archive. "Now or never," Thorn rumbled, his voice like grinding gravel. "Pip, can you get us past the bioscanners?" The floating eyes bobbed in what might have been a nod. "The emergency lockdown has most systems running on backup power. I can probably ghost us through the primary checkpoint, but once we're inside the Omega Vault, we're on our own." Professor Zelthara's warning echoed through the communication system. "All students return to dormitories immediately. This is not a drill. Any unauthorized access to restricted areas will result in immediate expulsion and memory modification." The 4 friends exchanged glances. Memory modification was reserved for the most serious breaches of galactic security. Whatever they were about to discover, someone desperately wanted it to stay hidden. "Memory modification," Crix repeated slowly. "They're not just trying to keep us out. They're planning to make us forget we ever asked these questions." As if summoned by their determination, a new sound filled the corridor, the distinctive hum of temporal displacement fields. Somewhere in the Academy, someone was manipulating time itself, possibly trying to prevent their mission before it even began. "The Omega Vault," Venna calculated quickly. "If we can reach it before they stabilize the temporal fields, we might be able to access the real archives before they can stop us." But as they prepared to move, a new voice spoke from the shadows behind them, calm, measured, and utterly terrifying in its implications. "I wouldn't do that if I were you." They spun around to see a figure emerging from what should have been solid wall, tall, bipedal, with strange patches of fur on its head, and an unsettling, predatory smile that revealed white teeth. The creature wore the simple gray uniform of an academy maintenance worker, but its eyes held an intelligence that seemed to pierce through each of them individually. "A human," Pip whispered, her invisibility flickering with shock. "But that's impossible. Humans aren't allowed beyond their home system." The human's smile widened, and for a moment the emergency lights seemed to dim around him. "Oh, we're here, little ones. We've always been here. The question is, are you absolutely sure you want to know why?" The human stepped fully into the corridor, and immediately the atmosphere changed. It wasn't just his presence, though his bipedal form seemed strangely efficient compared to their varied anatomies. It was something deeper. The emergency lights stabilized, the temporal displacement fields quieted, and even the galactic enforcement vessels outside seemed to pause their aggressive posturing. "My name is Marcus Chen," the human said, his voice carrying an odd accent that none of them could place. "I've been working maintenance on this station for about 15 years now. Funny thing about maintenance workers, nobody really sees us, do they?" Crix's scales had gone completely transparent, a fear response he couldn't control. "You're not supposed to be here. Humans are restricted to the Sol system by unanimous Galactic Council decree." Marcus laughed, a sound that seemed both amused and deeply sad. "Restricted, right, that's the story they tell you." He gestured toward the massive viewing ports where the enforcement vessels waited. "You see those ships out there? Magnificent technology, aren't they? Quantum-linked targeting systems, reality-bending shield generators, weapons that can crack moons in half." He paused, studying each of their faces carefully. "Want to know a secret? Humans built most of those systems. Oh, not directly. We're very careful about that. But the principles, the breakthrough discoveries, the little innovations that make impossible things possible, that's been us for the past 3 centuries. Venna's crystalline form resonated with confusion. That's illogical. The historical records clearly state that humans barely achieved interplanetary travel before the restriction was imposed. Your species was classified as developing, with limited technological capacity." "Limited," Marcus repeated, and his expression grew darker. "Tell me, in all your studies of galactic history, have you ever wondered why the wars ended so quickly? Why conflicts that should have lasted decades were resolved in mere months?" Thorne's rocky exterior shifted as he processed. "This information, you're suggesting human involvement, but that contradicts everything we've been taught about your species' capabilities." "Does it?" Marcus pulled out what looked like a simple maintenance scanner, but as he activated it, holographic displays filled the air around them with impossible detail. Star charts, battle formations, casualty reports, all classified beyond their clearance levels. "This is a Terran-manufactured quantum processor, by the way. Officially, it doesn't exist. Unofficially, there are about 50,000 of them throughout the galaxy, all disguised as everyday tools." Pip's floating eyes widened. "You're saying humans have been secretly supplying technology to the Galactic Council?" "Supplying?" Marcus shook his head. "Oh no, little shade. We don't supply anything. We are the supply. Every major conflict, every strategic decision, every miraculous tactical breakthrough. Humans planned it, humans executed it, and humans cleaned up afterward." The implications hit them like a physical blow. If what Marcus was saying was true, then everything they had learned about galactic politics, about the balance of power among species, about their own civilization's achievements, all of it was built on a lie. "But why?" Crix's voice cracked with the question. "Why hide your involvement? Why let other species take credit for your achievements?" Marcus was quiet for a long moment, and when he spoke again, his voice carried centuries of weariness. "Because the first time we didn't hide, we nearly destroyed the galaxy." The corridor fell silent except for the distant hum of the station's life support systems. Even the emergency siren seemed muted, as if the station itself was holding its breath. "The Omega Vault," Marcus said finally. "You want answers? The real ones are in there. But understand this. Once you see what's inside, you can never unsee it. You'll understand why every species in this galaxy, including your own, voted unanimously to ban humans from warfare. And you'll understand why we agreed. He gestured toward the sealed vault door at the end of the corridor. Professor Zelthara was trying to protect you, you know. She's one of the few who knows the truth. The memory modification protocols aren't punishment. They're mercy. But even as he spoke, his maintenance scanner chimed with an incoming message. His expression grew grim as he read the display. Too late, he muttered. They've made their decision. He looked up at the 4 students, and for the first time, they saw something that chilled them, fear in a human's eyes. The Galactic Council has just authorized a full historical revelation protocol. They're going to show you everything. What does that mean? Venna asked, though her crystalline structure was already resonating with dread. It means, Marcus said, checking his scanner again, that in about 30 minutes every species in the galaxy is going to learn exactly why humans are really banned from galactic war. And then you're going to understand why some knowledge is too dangerous for a civilized universe. The lights flickered once more, and somewhere in the depths of the station, ancient machinery began to hum with power that hadn't been activated in 3 centuries. The truth, it seemed, was about to set itself free, whether anyone was ready for it or not. The Omega Vault's massive doors hadn't been opened in over 200 years. As Marcus placed his seemingly ordinary maintenance badge against the bioscanner, the entire corridor filled with an otherworldly humming. Ancient precursor technology, supposedly lost to time, awakened with purpose that transcended normal understanding. Biometric confirmed, announced a voice that seemed to speak in all their native languages simultaneously. Warning, historical truth protocol, Omega-7 authorized. Full disclosure imminent. Estimated psychological impact civilization altering. The 4 students followed Marcus through corridors that defied the station's known architecture. The walls here were composed of some material that seemed to shift between dimensions, showing glimpses of other places, other times. Crix's scales had gone completely colorless, a state his species only achieved in the presence of something fundamentally beyond their comprehension. The precursors built this facility, Marcus explained as they walked. They were the first species to discover what humans are really capable of when we're given proper motivation. They also discovered why that capability needed to remain hidden. They entered a vast spherical chamber where holographic displays materialized from thin air, each one showing different aspects of galactic history. But these weren't the sanitized versions they had studied in school. These recordings showed the raw, unedited truth. Begin playback. Terran Integration War. Galactic Standard Year 2387, the chamber announced. The holographic displays shifted, and suddenly they were witnessing events from 3 centuries ago. They saw human ships, not the primitive vessels, described in their textbooks but sleek, impossible craft that moved through space like living things. They watched human soldiers who fought not with crude weapons, but with technology that seemed to bend reality itself. This was the first and last time humans participated openly in galactic warfare, Marcus said quietly. We had just achieved faster-than-light travel, and the Zephyrian Empire decided we were a potential threat to their territorial expansion. Crix watched in horror as the playback showed his ancestors' mighty fleet, thousands of vessels representing the pinnacle of Zephyrian military might, being systematically dismantled by a human force 1/10 their size. The engagement lasted 14 minutes, Marcus continued. Not 14 hours, not 14 days, 14 minutes, and that wasn't because we had superior technology. It was because of something else entirely. Venna's crystalline form was resonating at frequencies that indicated deep distress. The tactical reports we studied indicated the Zephyrian fleet was destroyed by a previously unknown spatial anomaly. There was no anomaly, Marcus said. Watch. The playback zoomed in on one of the human vessels. Inside, they could see the bridge crew, beings that looked remarkably similar to Marcus but with an intensity in their expressions that was both fascinating and terrifying. The humans weren't just fighting, they were enjoying it. This is what your ancestors discovered, Marcus said. Humans don't just participate in warfare, we excel at it. We don't just adapt to combat situations, we thrive in them. And most importantly, we don't fight to win territory or resources or political advantage. The holographic display shifted again, showing the aftermath of the battle. Instead of claiming the defeated Zephyrian territories, the human fleet had simply stopped. They collected their wounded, honored their dead, and withdrew to the edge of the system. "We fight because we love fighting," Marcus said simply. "Not the death, not the destruction, the challenge, the problem-solving. The ultimate test of capability against impossible odds." Pip's invisible form shimmered with confusion. "But that would make you the perfect military allies. Why would the galaxy ban you?" "Keep watching." The scene changed. Now they were seeing the aftermath, not just of the battle, but of the psychological impact on the galaxy. Species that had warred with each other for millennia suddenly found themselves united by a single, overwhelming realization. There was something in the galaxy that could end any conflict in minutes, not through superior technology or greater numbers, but through sheer, incomprehensible tactical brilliance. The Vorthan Confederacy sued for peace with the Andromedan Republic 3 days after news of the battle reached them. Marcus explained. The crystalline hegemony voluntarily dissolved their military structure. The Gorvak clans declared a permanent ceasefire with everyone. Thorn's rocky exterior was shifting colors, an involuntary response to extreme emotional stress. "You ended galactic warfare by demonstrating what real warfare looked like." "We terrified them," Marcus corrected. "And they were right to be terrified." The holographic display shifted once more, and now they were seeing classified records from the Galactic Council's emergency sessions following the battle. "Every species' strategic analysts reached the same conclusion," Marcus said as they watched alien leaders debating in sessions marked ultra-classified. If humans were allowed to participate in galactic conflicts, one of two things would happen. Either we would become the galaxy's military force, ending every conflict before it could properly begin, or, Crix asked, though his voice suggested he didn't want to know the answer, or we would become bored with easy victories and start creating our own conflicts, just to have something interesting to fight. The chamber fell silent, except for the hum of the ancient technology around them. The implications were staggering. Humans hadn't been banned because they were too primitive or too violent. They had been banned because they were too good at violence. So the restriction, Venna said slowly, wasn't to protect humans from advanced warfare. It was to protect everyone else from human warfare. Exactly, and for 3 centuries it worked. Humans agreed to the restriction because we understood the problem. We were given other challenges: exploration, scientific research, cultural development. In exchange, when the galaxy really needed our particular skills. Marcus gestured toward the enforcement fleet still visible through the chamber's transparent walls. "We provide consultants, anonymous advisors, mysterious tactical breakthroughs that appear just when they're needed most." But even as he spoke, new alarms began sounding throughout the station. The enforcement fleet outside was powering weapons, not in preparation for battle, but in response to something else entirely. "What's happening?" Pip asked. Marcus checked his scanner and his expression grew grave. The Zerathi hive mind just declared war on the core worlds. They've been planning this for decades, waiting for the right moment. He looked up at the 4 students, and they saw something in his eyes that made their blood run cold. The Galactic Council just voted to temporarily lift the human warfare restriction. "What does that mean?" Thorn asked. Marcus began moving toward the chamber's exit, his casual maintenance worker demeanor replaced by something far more purposeful. "It means, my young friends, that you're about to see exactly why some knowledge is too dangerous for a peaceful universe. The galaxy is about to remember what humans are really like when someone threatens our friends." As they hurried through the shifting corridors, the ancient precursor warnings echoed behind them. Warning: temporal warfare protocols detected. Reality alteration imminent. Historical truth classification. Galactic civilization survival threshold. The real lesson was about to begin. The Galactic Academy's main communications array crackled to life with transmissions from across known space. As Marcus led the 4 students through corridors now filled with frantic alien personnel, they could hear fragments of reports that painted an increasingly dire picture. "Zerathi forces have breached the neutral zone. 17 colonies under siege. Conventional weapons completely ineffective against their bioships. Marcus moved with a purpose none of them had seen before. The casual maintenance worker was gone, replaced by someone who seemed to navigate the station's chaos with predatory precision. His simple uniform somehow looked different now, not the gray coveralls of a janitor, but the practical clothing of someone who preferred to remain unnoticed. The Zerathi, Venna said as her crystalline form processed incoming data streams. I've studied them. They're a collective consciousness that has consumed 17 galaxies beyond the local group. Their biotechnology adapts faster than any known defense system. They've been probing our galaxy for 2 centuries, Marcus replied, leading them toward what appeared to be a maintenance shaft but was actually a concealed high-speed transport tube. Learning our tactics, studying our weaknesses, waiting for the moment when we'd be most vulnerable. Crix's scales flickered through a spectrum of colors as his species' natural pattern recognition abilities kicked into overdrive. The timing isn't coincidental. They waited until exactly when? What changed? Marcus paused at the transport tube entrance, his scanner now displaying tactical information that was clearly far beyond standard maintenance equipment. 3 days ago, the last of the Old Guard precursor observers died, the species that originally helped establish the human restriction protocols. With their oversight gone, the Galactic Council had to make decisions based on incomplete information. The transport tube carried them through sections of the station none of them had known existed. Through transparent aluminum viewing ports, they could see vast chambers where beings worked at consoles displaying star maps, weapons arrays, and fleet deployments. These weren't Academy personnel. These were military strategists from dozens of species, and they all wore the same expression of barely controlled panic. Emergency command, Marcus explained. It's been here all along, hidden inside what you thought was just an educational facility. The Academy was built as cover for the galaxy's ultimate contingency plan. They emerged into a command center that defied belief. The chamber was massive, its walls showing real-time holographic displays of the entire galaxy. Red zones marked Zerathi incursions, blue zones showed Galactic Council forces, and scattered throughout were tiny green indicators that pulsed with steady confidence. The green markers, Pip whispered, her invisible form betraying her location only through her awestruck voice. What are those? Human consultants, Marcus said. There are about 12,000 of us scattered throughout the galaxy at any given time. Maintenance workers, cultural attachés, research assistants, trade representatives, all volunteers, all ready. An elderly Christarch, one of Venna's species but far more evolved, approached them. Her multifaceted form radiated authority and deep weariness. Marcus Chen, Maintenance Specialist Classification Omega-7, your activation code. Marcus straightened, and suddenly he didn't look like maintenance personnel at all. Terran Strategic Response Unit Designation Janitor. Authorization. When the wolf comes home to roost, the shepherd remembers old songs. The Christarch's form chimed with recognition, and something that might have been relief. Acknowledged. Current threat assessment? Zerathi bioadaptation rate suggests conventional galactic forces will be overwhelmed within 72 hours, Marcus replied without hesitation. Recommendation: full human tactical integration, limited temporal interference authorization, and immediate implementation of Protocol Lazarus. The 4 students watched this exchange with growing understanding. This wasn't a maintenance worker receiving orders. This was a strategic analyst being given permission to do what humans apparently did best. Thorn's rocky exterior had shifted to colors that indicated deep philosophical confusion. Protocol Lazarus? The Christarch turned to them, her ancient wisdom evident in every harmonic. The protocol that allows humans to fight as humans fight, without restraint, without consideration for conventional tactical thinking, without the limitations that civilized warfare typically requires. On the main display, they could see the Zerathi forces advancing through the outer rim. Their bioships moved like living things, adapting to every weapon used against them, learning from every encounter. Conventional galactic forces were being systematically destroyed by an enemy that evolved faster than tactical responses could be developed. Show them, Marcus said to the Christarch. They came looking for truth. They deserved to see what truth actually looks like. The displays shifted, and suddenly they were watching something impossible. The green markers, the human consultants scattered throughout the galaxy, were moving. Not just moving, but coordinating in patterns that seemed to defy both physics and strategic logic. 17 different battlefronts, the Christarch explained, each one hopeless by conventional analysis. Each one about to demonstrate why humans were originally restricted from galactic warfare. They watched as tiny human forces engaged Zarathi biofleets with tactics that made no sense. Instead of attempting to match the aliens' adaptive capabilities, the humans seemed to be doing the opposite, creating deliberately chaotic, seemingly random attack patterns that somehow anticipated the Zarathi's evolutionary responses. They're not trying to overcome the bioadaptation, Crix realized, his scales now shifting through patterns his species used for advanced mathematical concepts. They're using it against itself. Every time the Zarathi adapt to one attack pattern, Venna added, her crystalline form resonating with comprehension, the humans switch to something that exploits the adaptation they just made. It's not just tactical flexibility, Pip observed from her invisible vantage point. They're thinking 3 steps ahead of a species that evolves in real time. Marcus nodded approvingly. Now you're beginning to understand. Humans don't just adapt to their enemies. We make our enemies adapt to us, and then we exploit the fact that they had to change. On the displays, the impossible was happening. Zarathi biofleets that had consumed entire star systems were being systematically dismantled by human forces that shouldn't have been capable of mounting any significant resistance. But then the displays showed something else. In the aftermath of each human victory, the consultants weren't claiming territory or demanding recognition. They were already moving toward the next crisis, the next impossible challenge. This is why we're banned, Marcus said quietly. Not because we can't fight effectively, but because we can't stop fighting effectively. Give us one victory, and we immediately start looking for the next problem to solve. The harder, the better. As if summoned by his words, new alarms filled the command center. The displays showed something that made even the Christarch's ancient wisdom falter. The Zarathi weren't retreating in defeat. They were evolving again, this time not just tactically but strategically, creating new forms of bioship specifically designed to counter human tactical patterns. Impossible, the Christarch said. They're adapting to adaptation itself. Marcus's expression changed, and for the first time, the 4 students saw what a human looked like when presented with the ultimate challenge. His eyes lit up with something that was both terrifying and magnificent. Finally, he said, something interesting.